First, months after the U.S. actually already hit the debt limit. We'll talk about that later. News media have focused headlines on the terrifying possibilities, what happens if there is a debt default, which really hasn't happened. We don't do that. And so the bigger question is, where are we in the process, not the panic? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
I get it. Panic sells and panic gets clicks, but we're not going to panic. We've been describing the process for several months now in terms of where we actually are as it relates to the debt ceiling. And it's important to recognize, even in just any negotiation process, this has pretty much followed it almost to the T. And that is, you have an initial meeting with the two principals, in this case, the Speaker of the House and the President of the United States. After that meeting, there's a lot of rhetoric. They decide staff will then meet. That happens for a few days. The two principals get back together in the Oval Office. They come back. They each appoint specific negotiators and representatives, a very small group. They work at it for a few days. There's usually some drama partway through that negotiation process. One of the sides or both choose to walk away from the table. We had that. Then they get back to the table, which happened over the weekend, last weekend. And then they kind of plod their way through and then ultimately get down to a narrowing of the deal. And I think that's where we are. We're on Friday now. And my guess is, based on what I'm hearing coming out of Washington, is there's a pretty decent framework and some pretty strong agreement on a number of the pieces of the puzzle. And if I had to place my bets on all of this, my guess is that sometime tomorrow, could be as early as tomorrow morning, that you will hear about a deal that has been struck. And then they'll work on the legislative text, then they'll have to have votes, and we'll get into that as we move along. So this morning, Speaker McCarthy, as he's been very focused on and leaning into over the last several weeks, had a little gaggle of reporters as he came into the Capitol this morning, and he talked about, importantly, the final negotiations, what they're coming down to.
It's really coming down to one thing. This has been about spending. The Democrats have never wanted to stop the amount of spending that they go, and they want to just keep adding and adding and adding. I do not think it's right that you borrow money from China to pay people to stay home that are able-bodied with no dependents on the couch.
Speaker McCarthy also talked about some of the rumbling and grumblings that are starting to come out. And this is an interesting part of this whole process. The moment you start hearing grumblings from the far right or the far left, that means that a deal is pretty close because they're starting to hear what they think the specifics of the deal will be. So for Speaker McCarthy, to his flank is the House Freedom Caucus. And there have been rumblings that the House Freedom Caucus is not yet on board with what could be the deal.
You're talking to people who don't know what's in the deal. So I'm not concerned about anybody making any comments right now about what they think is in or not in. Whenever we come to an agreement, we'll make sure we will first brief our entire conference.
And so that's an important part. Often you get these members of Congress who aren't in the room where it's happening, but they still want to rush to a camera to make a comment or to try to get a social media moment. And so they're commenting on, oh, this isn't going to happen. I'm going to vote no on that. And they don't know what's in the deal yet. And so you have to be careful of that. I think both sides, both the Democrats and the Republican negotiators, were actually very happy when they put the House into recess yesterday. The best thing for the negotiators, get the members of Congress out of town, except for those that have to be there in the room. And so that has been done. Most of the members of Congress have gone back to their districts for the Memorial Day weekend. Interesting, in a press conference yesterday, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries was asked if he could support a deal which included things they said they didn't want in there, spending cuts.
It's clear to me that President Biden is continuing to hold the line as it relates to the types of devastating cuts that Republicans are trying to jam down the throats of the American people, including making sure that he stands up for our veterans.
Now, Jeffries went on to say that he believes Republicans think a default would actually be a good thing for them politically.
But what is clear to me increasingly is that many extreme MAGA Republicans have made the political calculation that a dangerous default and crashing the economy and triggering a recession is in their political interests.
And that's the point where I disagree with Hakeem Jeffries. And again, you've heard similar things coming out of the right wing of the Republican Party as well, in terms of who wants what and who is racing to disaster faster. All of those kinds of political rhetoric things are coming from both sides. I didn't think Hakeem Jeffries would go down that path, but he did yesterday just a little bit. But here was an interesting thing. This was actually a little earlier in the week. And I think this was an important question for Hakeem Jeffries. This is the first big test he's had as minority leader in the House. He was asked a question about why Democrats didn't raise the debt ceiling when the Democrats were in control of the House, the Senate, and the White House back in December of last year.
Do you have regrets? Do you have regrets that your party did not raise the debt ceiling when it was in the majority?
It's not my understanding that the challenge was not addressing the debt ceiling because Democrats refused to do it. But it's my understanding that Republicans in the Senate were unwilling to discuss this issue last December, perhaps because they wanted to set up a hostage-taking situation.
All right. Now that's you could tell that caught Leader Jeffries off guard. He was not ready to answer that question. He should have been ready to answer that question from the Democratic side because they didn't need any Republican votes on that one because of the type of bill that it was. They could have just done that with a 50-vote majority. And so that was a very interesting thing, a little bit of a misstep for Hakeem Jeffries. And again, he's trying to navigate and keep his caucus together, the Democrats together. And again, he's doing this for the first time. And so there's a lot of uncertainties there as well. Now, before we set this aside for a bit, I want to dig into just the panic versus the process. Yesterday, we had our good friend James Wallner from the R Street Institute on, and we were talking about this X date, June the 1st, and everyone is framing that as that is when we're going to break through the debt ceiling. And James reminded us correctly that we already are there.
Well, the first thing is that the government hit its debt limit back in January, but we've been able to continue to fund our activities and pay interest on our current debt, which is $31.4 trillion, by employing a series of so-called extraordinary measures. And those measures are going to run out in June. And so if Congress doesn't raise the debt by the time those measures run out, it will have to operate on incoming revenue, which there is incoming revenue, and it'll have to choose what to use that incoming revenue to do, because it's not enough to pay for everything. And what it will do, what we know it will do based on what administration officials in the past have testified before Congress about, is it will use that incoming revenue to pay interest on the debt because it doesn't want to default, and we're not going to default because we have more than enough revenue to pay interest on the debt. And then it will delay payments to the guy who cuts the grass on the National Mall, to congressional staffers, to others in the federal government and other kinds of activities that the federal government spends money on. You're not going to be able to buy, a bunch of office supplies potentially if we hit the debt limit and we have to operate on incoming revenue for a while.
All right, so that's an important thing. We hit the debt limit in January. We've just been using incoming revenue to pay for what's going on. It gets harder come June 1st. Just like for your own family, you probably have a lot of bills that are due on the first of each month. The federal government's the same. It's got a lot of bills that they have to pay at the first of the month. But as you go through the month, there's still money coming into the Treasury every day. Now you're asking, where does that come from? It's business taxes, it's small business taxes, it's individuals who are filing as sole proprietors and have to make estimated payments every quarter. So there's always money coming into the government. And it's just those first few days of the month that are hardest for the government to cover. Then you get through the month and money keeps coming in and there's not a lot of bills left to pay and things are all right. Now, we don't want to get to that point, obviously, because that can put some things at risk that would be scary, that would be dangerous for the security of the country. But I'm glad that James reminded us that, one, we've already hit the debt limit. We blew past it at 1,000,000 miles an hour in January. And so now this next phase is an important part. And just quickly, President Biden said that he was confident that the congressional leaders' promise that there will be no default is legit, and that the negotiations are about the spending and the budget.
And it's time for Congress to act now. Now, I want to be clear that the negotiations we're having with Speaker McCarthy is about the outlines of what the budget will look like, not about default. It's about competing visions for America. Under my administration, we've already cut the deficit by $1.7 trillion in our first 2 years. But Speaker McCarthy and I have a very different view of who should bear the burden of additional efforts to get our fiscal house in order.
Lots to be done, lots of work yet to do, and I think it will get done. I think we'll hear the framing and specifics of a deal starting tomorrow morning by midday at the latest. Then they'll have to work through legislative language, give members of Congress an opportunity to read it. I love that they're actually going to give them time to read it. And then my guess is Tuesday evening of next week, there'll be a vote in the House. They'll kick it over to the Senate, who will get it done and pass it on to the president. So don't panic. It's a process, and the process rolls on, and we're all going to be just fine in the end.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. One day a year is not enough.
I've been in the Navy 10 years. It'll be 11 March.
One long weekend is insufficient.
I've been 19 years, coming up on 20, and want to make it 4 more.
I'm a wife, a mother, and a soldier.
This Memorial Day and every day, we thank our military. We're grateful for their families. We honor those who are fallen and those who are left behind at KSL News Radio.
I found, Tim, that one of the hardest things about being a mom is just deciding what to cook for dinner every night.
I know.
Which is part of why I'm so excited to tell everybody about Beehive Meals.
It is a Utah company, and at some point we're going to have to tell the story of the Jacksons and how they actually got this going in 2019. But if you've been struggling with having tacos one night and spaghetti another night, open up your world for dinner with things like Mongolian beef stir-fry or Parmesan honey pork roast.
Your family dinner has just never been easier than it is with these. They're pre-assembled freezer meals. I put it in the crock pot. I set it for how long it needs to go. It stays warm after that. And that way, if the family can't all eat together, if one person has basketball and another, it's just warm for whenever they're ready.
And by the way, less than $3.50 per serving. You couldn't go out to the store or out to dinner, certainly on your own, for that price.
You're absolutely right, Tim. I couldn't buy the ingredients for any less.
Start it for your family right now. Go to beehivemeals.com.
When it comes to your electrical system, do you know the warning signs to look for? What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and it's okay if you don't know, but here are a few things that you might not even realize could be a sign of a bigger problem. Wall plates that are hot to the touch, discoloration around switches or outlets, if you hear crackling or popping or buzzing around switches or outlets, a breaker that trips a lot, switches that feel loose when you operate them, if your lights dim or flicker when a major appliance comes on, if your plugs fall out of the wall easily. You know, you're not supposed to have to bend the prongs out on a plug just to get it to stay in the wall. If you notice any of these things, you should consider having a licensed electrician check your system out. If you don't know anyone, Any Hour Services has put together a radio-only special for any homeowners listening. One of our licensed electricians will perform a comprehensive electrical inspection and give you a full written report for only $29. But you have to mention this ad when you call. To schedule your comprehensive electrical inspection by a licensed electrician for only $29, call Any Hour Services at 801-443-7300. That's 801-443-7300. Any Hour Services.
Check out Hot Tub Factory Outlet and Backyards of America Memorial Day savings. This Friday, Saturday, and Monday. Save 20, 30, even up to 40% off select models MSRP. Hot tub starting as low as $39.95. You heard right, $39.95. Our hot tubs have never been priced better, and we're slashing prices on our swim spas and saunas too. We need to move 100 hot tubs this weekend, and we're ready to wheel and deal and give you the best prices of the season. It's time to come check out the biggest swim spa supercenter in the state. It might just be time to look at your very own swim spa. And for a limited time, get a $2,800 Fat Tire scooter for free with purchase while supplies last. We're wheeling and dealing this Memorial Day weekend, Friday the 26th, Saturday the 27th, and Monday the 29th until 5 p.m. Check out our showroom for styles, colors, and sizes. 2 locations, Draper next to Cowabunga Bay and Backyards of America and Sandy.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, a 24-year-old man was killed this morning when a car plowed through some yards in West Valley City. Second, funeral services for KSL TV's longtime news anchor Dick Norris are underway in St. George this afternoon. There's a link for those who'd like to listen at kslnewsradio.com. Third, work requirements for federal aid programs still a sticking point in the negotiations to raise the federal debt ceiling. Right now, 74 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Well, it's graduation season, of course, and we always do a little look at some of the unique commencement speeches that are delivered around the country. And here's a unique one for you. The graduating class at Johns Hopkins University had a surprising guest deliver the commencement speech this week. Ukrainian President Zelensky was on tap. President Zelensky appeared on a big screen speaking to the graduates from Kyiv, and the message he sent was maybe a little surprise. It was definitely a think again moment, I think, for some of those graduates. It wasn't about war. It wasn't about great leadership. It wasn't about conflict. It wasn't about oppression. It was about the essence of time. President Zelensky said that the most valuable resource isn't oil or minerals.
Time is the most valuable resource on the planet. Not oil or uranium, not lithium or anything else, but time. Time. The very flow of time convinces us of this.
That very flow of time it shows that it really is the most priceless commodity that we have on the planet. And just imagine that. I would have loved to have been in the room when he was crafting this speech in a war zone with everything going on around him, both in his own country and around the world and all that was taking place. And he has been one that has talked a lot about time and the essence for speed, while some of the help and aid and weaponry was very slow to come. It's always been about time when it comes to President Zelensky. He said that he recently spent time on the front lines of the war effort, and he told the graduates that the Ukrainian soldiers have a lot in common with those graduating students, but there are also some differences as well.
The front in Ukraine consists of very, very different people who are fighting for freedom and independence. And these are people of all ages. And among them are exactly the same folks as you are now. Some of them have already passed their graduation ceremony. Others are only dreaming about it. They and you have similar hopes for life, similar expectations from life. But there is fundamental difference that comes down to the question of time. The time of your life is under your control.
He talked about how the Ukrainians don't have control of their lives right now because of the Russian invasion. He went from talking about time and how crucial and critical it is that we don't squander it or waste it. He also talked about some specific advice for the graduates to have a vision for what they want their life to become.
You have to know exactly why you need today and how you want your tomorrows to look like. You have to know this when you are a politician and have to achieve a certain goal for your country. You have to know this when you are a soldier and you have to defend your position so that the whole country is protected. You have to know this when you just have to go through life.
Importantly, the president of Ukraine went on to say that the struggle in Ukraine is so similar to the struggle during World War II and the struggles that really have taken place over time, that it is a battle between freedom and tyranny.
President Biden, a strong bipartisan coalition in Congress, and most of all, the American people have, like the generations before them, risen to this occasion and are leading the free world to secure freedom in Europe. We Ukrainians believe a free and secure Ukraine is the final step in the struggle to liberate Europe from the evil of tyrannies. This struggle that brought your great-grandparents to the shores of northern France some 80 years ago.
I loved how President Zelensky connected those that are fighting on the front lines of Ukraine in the battle against Russia today actually have a lot in common with those graduating students from Johns Hopkins University with their great-grandparents. He said that these were the same things. This battle of good and evil, this freedom versus tyranny, is the same struggle that brought these students' great-grandparents to the northern shores of France 80 years ago. I love how he connected that. And so if you look at that from the top of his speech, looking at this essence of time and what a valuable resource it is, and how we have to be very careful about our choices in how we use our time. Everyone gets the same amount. And I'm actually one of those who believes there's no such thing as time management. You really can't manage time. Manage means you're going to hold it, mold it, shape it, or form it, influence it, control it, or have direct control over it. And you can't do that with time. You can't hold time or shape it or form it or save it for tomorrow. And so what that leaves you with is choice management. And President Zelensky was telling the graduates, be careful of your choices and make sure you have a vision of what you want those choices to produce in terms of results. That way your time will be well spent and your life will be well lived. And then he concluded by saying that a future without tyranny and all of our tomorrows really depends on those very choices that we make today.
I'm certain you, as your forefathers, will continue to lead the free world, and this century will be our century, a century where freedom, innovation, and democratic values reign, a century where tyrannies that repress their own and seek to enslave their neighbors will vanish from us once and for all. But all of our tomorrows and the tomorrows of our children and grandchildren depends on each of our todays.
Pretty stirring speech from the president of Ukraine to the graduate at Johns Hopkins University. Definitely had to be an interesting look up there on the screen to find somebody in the middle of a war zone delivering a graduation speech. That's called speaking under pressure, a different kind of pressure. But I love the themes that President Zelensky wove together, and he's proven time and again that he is a master of the moment. He understands how to craft and shape a message in ways that are powerful and highly impactful. And I can't imagine that there was a graduate in the audience there that didn't feel something a little bit different than maybe they had expected going into their graduation exercises. And I think it's a good message for all of us, especially rolling into a Memorial Day weekend, that it is about time. None of us know how much we have or when that time might be cut short. And so we better use it and use it well. We better use it with a vision for the future and the things that we desire most. And we better make sure that freedom is part of the equation. Because in the absence of freedom and the absence of choice, life is pretty dreary. Under a dictator, under an empire that is pursuing and invading and breaching the sovereignty of other nations, there is very little choice, and there is no vision in terms of what comes next. And Vladimir Volodymyr Zelensky has given a vision to the people of Ukraine, and this week to the graduates of Johns Hopkins University, of what that actually should look like. So choices matter. All right, we'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. Much more to come on Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We'll talk about this longing for belonging, this need to connect, and how we do that in the workplace. Coming up next. Stick around.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. A man is recovering from his injuries today after his car went over a cliff in Washington County. He ended up falling 200 feet inside the car near Little Mesa. Washington County Sheriff's Deputy Jacob Paul says the victim survived the major fall and crawled back up to the road.
I know that he was able to walk out, but given how bad the accident was and how mangled the vehicle was, I suspect that his injuries were probably a lot worse than what we were seeing on scene.
Paul says medical crews then transported the man to the hospital. 4-day work weeks could be in the cards for some Utah State workers. The hybrid and staggered schedules have helped to reduce cost for some of those workers and improve efficiency by giving staff 3-day weekends. Even though some campgrounds are closed this holiday, others are opening just in time for Memorial Day. BLM officials are opening several in the Moab area, including Kings Bottom, Gold Bar, Goose Island, and others. Those have been struggling with flooding, but they managed to control that in time for the holiday weekend. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The clock still ticking on the quest to reach an agreement on the debt ceiling. Congressman Garrett Graves is negotiating for the Republicans. A reporter asked him about today's progress.
There are outstanding issues. We are not there, but I think we've really identified where the biggest differences are.
It would still take several days to get the legislation passed once an agreement is reached. Your money at this moment, a strong up day for the Dow Jones average right now, 336 points in the green, and the NASDAQ is up 282 points right now. And our KSL weather, we're expecting another afternoon and evening thunderstorm. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:32.
This summer, the political season heats up.
By August, it'll be time for debates. Can you believe it?
We're planning coverage of the real issues, the important stories that impact how we live.
Listen each morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Hey, Derek Overstreet here from the New Millennium Group, financial advisors in Utah. I've been helping people retire in the state of Utah for the last 20 years. The way we do that is we actually find out what is important to you. We create a step-by-step plan that takes into consideration your income, your debt, whether you want money from real estate, stock market, annuities, life insurance, whatever. If you want to deal with professionals, people that are fiduciaries and have a legal responsibility and obligation to do what's in your best interest, give my team a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. Or go to my website, utahsfinancialplanner.com. If you'd like to retire 3 to 5 years before you thought it was possible, give my team a call right now. 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370.
Quality, speed, value for your money, and $1,000 off any roof replacement. That's the IWC advantage. IWC, Intermountain West Contractors, delivers on the things most important to you when it comes time to replace your roof. There could be a dozen different reasons why your roof needs replacement, but just one answer to the problem: IWC. With IWC, you get quality because roof replacement is their specialty, and each job comes complete with the best warranties from the most trusted roofing material manufacturer in America. You get speed because IWC understands your time is valuable. In most cases, they can replace an entire roof in just one day. And with IWC, there's the value of knowing they use top-tier quality materials in every installation and deliver it all at an affordable price. And now, for a limited time, save $1,000 on a roof replacement project. Visit IWCroofing.com or call 801-232-5690. That's 801-232-5690.
We have emergency triple team traffic now, brought to you by Granite Credit Union, helping members since 1935. Here's Ricky Meeks.
A vehicle fire is causing delays on I-15 in Utah County. This occurred southbound, right about 800 north in Orem. 2 right lanes are blocked. Aubrey?
Things are looking good if you're traveling in Salt Lake County. No delays on I-15 or 215's east and west side belt. Steve?
Both directions of I-15 good to go between downtown Salt Lake and Brigham City. Same story on I-84, 215 on the west belt, Legacy, and Highway 89. Plan for heavy holiday traffic this Memorial Day weekend. Delays up to 20 minutes are expected on I-15 in Salt Lake County and US 6 in Spanish Fork Canyon, so allow extra time. Steve Carlson in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, we'll see more thunderstorms this afternoon, and for the next couple of days, things, though, should clear up Monday with highs rising into the low 80s. And right now, 73 degrees, mostly cloudy at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. This is Utah's all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
We have been talking at some length over the course of the past month about the longing for belonging, that craving to be connected to something bigger than ourselves. And often we think about that in the sense of family or neighborhood or community. But we've also touched on it in terms of business. You may remember a conversation we had a little bit ago with Kimberly Serrano from the Immigration Council. And we decided to extend that conversation and bring it right here home to the state of Utah on the business level. And we have to recognize that businesses across the country and here in the state of Utah are always trying to figure out, how do you help employees have a better experience at work? Well, one Utah organization, the Center for Economic Opportunity and Belonging, has released a new digital toolkit available to all Utah employers that aims to increase that sense of belonging in the workplace. And so we're going to talk about some of those tools. And to help us do that today, we're really thrilled. We have Ziming Sao, is the director at the Center for Economic Opportunity and Belonging. And we also have Scott Cuthbertson, who's the CEO of EDC Utah. And welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Boyd. It's
great to be here.
And Z, let me start with you. Give us a sense of what's happening here in the state of Utah. What are you doing at the Center for Economic Opportunity and Belonging?
Yeah, we found that belonging is such an incredibly important issue for the whole entire state, but particularly with the workplaces. Studies have found that workplaces is really a place where you meet people from diverse cultures and traditions, and just a really great place where you can build a bond with each other. And to promote that, we want to build toolkits to help local businesses to be able to do that and encourage the sense of building belongings, both inside the businesses as well as outside the community.
Yeah, and we'll talk about some of the specifics of the toolkit in just a minute. But Z, let me ask you, it's been really interesting, obviously, over the course of the pandemic, and now we sort of have these really hybrid kind of situations, some home, some at work, some 2 days a week, and lots of variations. And so that connectivity isn't quite as consistent as it used to be. What are you seeing out there?
I think that is absolutely true. We're seeing a lot of disconnects because of the new models of how we operate businesses. We have hybrid models, we have remote models. And what we found is that the importance of building those intentionalities of bringing people together becomes even more important. Whereas in the past, we might be able to see each other in your lunchrooms and be able to chat with each other. That might not be the case anymore. So for businesses, think about how do we think about strategies in bringing employees together so that they can build a sense of belonging and build a sense of connectivities and build a community, right? At the heart of belonging is really building those connections, relationships, so that we are a stronger community together.
Everybody wants to be part of a story. Everyone wants to be part of a story, and I think that's so important. I know some of the toolkit elements are part of that. Scott, I want to jump over to you and talk about EDC Utah's involvement in this. This is an extraordinary project that seems to really have some legs underneath it and a really bright future. Tell us about it.
Yeah, happy to, Boyd. And, you know, as Z was talking there about this kind of acute need for a sense of belonging, we stood up this entity, the Center for Economic Opportunity and Belonging, because we saw a need coming kind of years in the works. We're focused on economic development. We're focused on economic development. We also do quite a bit of corporate interfacing. When companies are looking at coming to Utah, we're kind of the front door. We offer them that concierge service, provide them with research and data about Utah. And what we saw was there were some companies who were concerned about their employees coming to a state where there was at least a perception of not having cultures like those they belong to.
Yeah.
So we saw that, and we looked across what we could do in terms of our mission, and came up with the idea for the Center of Economic Opportunity and Belonging about 2 years ago, and it's been a great success. This toolkit is just one of a number of different tools that employers, both coming into the state and those that are in the state currently, can use to understand how do they reach employees of different belongings, how do they interact with them, how can they make them feel like they're part of the team, and to really help kind of bridge that gap. And we think it's been hugely successful so far.
Yeah, as you look at that, Scott, I'm going to ask you this. I'm going to ask you this question as well. That ability to bring your whole authentic self to work and bringing your faith and your ethnicity and your passions and all of that to the workplace. How are the businesses that are doing this right and doing it well? What are they doing that is fostering that?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I think it's understanding about the backgrounds of their employees. It's creating opportunities for them to express what they're feeling, to share who they are with others without being judged.
Yeah.
Something that we try to do internally within EDC Utah as part of our own culture. And I think if I could just add why it's so important, if you need a reason other than it seems like the right thing to do, the business benefits are palpable. So there are a number of studies out there. Boston Consulting Group, the study that showed that those employers with diverse workforces have 19% more revenue than those that are less diverse. In terms of retention, 50% higher. In terms of sick days, 75% fewer sick days used for companies that have a culture of belonging. So it's pretty dramatic and pretty clear.
Yeah, that brings it right to the bottom line, and it brings it to the people which deliver that bottom line. I actually love that. Z, what are you seeing?
Yeah, absolutely, and that bottom line is important. But I want to talk about, this is the right thing to do as well. Right? I think this is why it so resonates with so many companies in the state and elsewhere. It's the right thing to do, and it helps the bottom line. And in terms of the right thing to do, not only does it help create a better bottom line, but your employees are happier.
Yeah.
And when you have a happier employee and they feel like they belong there, I mean, that adds to a lot of productivity as well. And I think that element of just investing and the fact is that it doesn't really cost that much, right?
Yeah.
If you do it right. And I think one thing we want to iterate, and the reason why we provided and created this toolkit, is that you can start somewhere.
Yeah.
This is the toolkit provides a pathway for companies to get started. You don't have to start all the way into the premium version.
Yeah.
You don't have to hire 2 employees dedicated to this, right? You can start. We want to meet companies where they are and provide those very tactical things that you can do. So in the toolkit, we lay out a couple of steps. The first and I think most important step is leadership, right? How can leadership demonstrate and show support that this is the right thing to do and make a commitment in doing it? And so we provide examples. This, if you're a company and you're interested and this is important to you, write a statement about why you believe in this. Making sure that you issue a statement to your employees saying that this is an important value to a company, right? And then we provide very tactical things. What can you do after you do that, right?
Yeah.
How do you promote the sense of getting your employees together? Whether that is just having an activity in your company that brings people together. And when we talk about this, how do we create that magic when we're in the lunchrooms?
Yeah.
Even though people are not having lunches together, you can still create a magic.
That's right.
What is that strategy?
So important.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good. And where can people find the toolkit? Where do they need to look?
So the individuals and businesses could go to the EDC Utah website, so edcutah.org, and they could download the toolkit, and it's free.
Oh, wow. All of the things. So, Z, you pointed out some really important things, especially if you're a small or medium-sized business and you're worried that this sounds really expensive. Most of the things that create belonging and connection cost almost nothing. Some of it does cost nothing, but it does always take leadership. It's always a leadership question, and I love that you framed it that way. I think that's so important for leaders, regardless of the size of the company or the organization or the community, by the way. I think it applies to community as well. If you're going to lead and create that kind of statement and vision to create space for people to belong and feel connected is a powerful thing. Scott, before we let you go for the Memorial Day weekend, give us your thought in terms of the vision of what's next. How do you continue this mantra, this march, and this crucial part of EDC Utah?
Yeah. So, the Center for Belonging has been really successful the last 2 years, and they're actually going to be graduating from EDC Utah, and that's a conscious move to allow them to kind of spread their wings.
Yeah.
Frankly, we can't keep pace with them. There's so much momentum and so much of an appetite out there for belonging.
I think Z's the Energizer Bunny.
she is. She's dynamic and doing a great job. But I think as we look forward, we're going to stay closely connected with them. We're going to continue to promote these values. As we look across Utah as a state and the growth trends that we're seeing, 1 in 3 Utahns in the future will identify as being from a multicultural background. It's 1 in 4 right now.
Yeah.
The next 10, 20 years or so, it's going to become increasingly more important to be able to reach people of different backgrounds, and we're going to be out helping to support them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So grateful to have both of you in studio today. We're going to have you back. This is just the beginning of this conversation. It's a crucial one. Z Sal is the director at the Center for Economic Opportunity and Belonging. And Scott Cuthbertson, of course, is the CEO of EDC Utah. Grateful to have both of you in. And everyone, again, you can check out that toolkit. create that sense of belonging and connectivity in your organization. edcutah.org is the place to check that out. Thanks to both of you for joining us today.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and step aside for a quick break. When we come back, it's that time of the week, the inside look at the inside sources of the inside track of 2024 presidential politics. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It may be summer, but the news isn't slowing down this year.
Ankle deep water at Wasatch Hollow.
Guilty on all charges. State leaders going into a special session. Make KSL your go-to each morning this summer. Utah's Morning News with Tim and Amanda starts at 5. We talk through the biggest stories with Dave and Dejanovic at 9 and Boyd Matheson at 1. Then drive home with key news updates with Jeff Kaplan from 3 to 7. Your all-summer companion for news. KSL News Radio.
Register for breaking news updates by texting the word news to the Cypress Credit Union KSL text line at 57500.
At aimyourdigital.com, we'll help you target the right audience, build your leads, and crush your quota. Take your business to the next level. Our digital marketing strategies help grow awareness of your product or service, all while building trust in your business. Our approach involves leveraging multiple tools and strategies to deliver exceptional results that are customized to your unique business needs. Don't wait to run out of sales leads. Keep your business growing. Get started with aimyourdigital.com today.
As a roofer, I'm always on the go, so I need to be able to get things done from anywhere. That's why I partner with Beacon. With the new Beacon Pro Plus app, I've got the brands I depend on, like GAF, right at my fingertips. It's like having my Beacon rep in my pocket 24/7. I rely on Beacon because I never stop building, and neither do they. Now through June, purchase through Beacon Pro Plus and earn up to $1,500. Beacon, always building.
Here's what happens when you get brand new custom vinyl windows from Advanced Window Products. All of a sudden, your house has more curb appeal. Your home is more secure. Your heating and air conditioning bills tumble, and you have a local company in business 37 years standing behind their work for life. But that's not all. Since they build your custom windows at their facility in Salt Lake, there's no middleman markup. So you can save money on the highest quality windows on the market. Argon-filled double pane glass. Insulation within the vinyl framing. Top of the line, built to spec. They will create magnificent bow windows, doggy doors cut into the glass. Any color, it's all custom, all installed by their team, and every window is guaranteed for life. Rocky Mountain and Dominion offer rebates. Advanced Windows offers 60-month 0% financing, and right now, save $2,000 on 10 windows or more. So save now, pay later. Call Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, or visit advancedwindowsusa.com.
Emergency Triple Team Traffic brought to you by Granite Credit Union, helping members since 1935. And we do have emergency traffic in Utah County, southbound I-15. Crews are in the final stages of mopping up this vehicle fire at 800 North in Orem. They have opened up other lanes of travel. It's sitting over to the right shoulder, but we still have big backups to Pioneer Crossing in American Fork. Aubrey?
Well, if you're traveling in Salt Lake County, I-15 is looking great, and 215 and east to west side belts look good. But if you're on Mountain View Corridor near 3500 South, that's looking a little bit busy there. Ricky.
And for those headed north, you've got a good drive in front of you on I-15, Legacy, and Highway 89. Bear River, Bear Lake, and Willard Bay looking really good at this time with no problems in your way. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
I can't wait for what's next, even with higher stroke risk due to atrial fibrillation and irregular heartbeat not caused by a heart valve problem. Eliquis, the Apixaban tablets, reduces stroke risk. It's the #1 cardiologist-prescribed blood thinner.
Don't stop taking prescription Eliquis without talking to your doctor, as this may increase your risk of stroke. Eliquis can cause serious and in rare cases fatal bleeding. Don't take Eliquis if you have an artificial heart valve, abnormal bleeding, or have antiphospholipid syndrome. While taking, you may bruise more easily or take longer for bleeding to stop. A spinal injection while on Eliquis increases risk of blood clots, which may cause paralysis, the inability to move. Get medical help right away for unexpected bleeding or unusual bruising, or if you have tingling, numbness, or muscle weakness. It may increase your bleeding risk if you take medicines such as aspirin products, NSAIDs, SSRIs, MRIs, SNRIs, and blood thinners. Tell your doctor about all planned medical or dental procedures. Learn more at Eliquis.com or call 1-855-ELIQUIS.
If you've got a honey-do list with electrical, plumbing, heating, or air conditioning projects on it, Any Hour Services can help. Call Any Hour Services, electrical, plumbing, heating, and air. AnyHourServices.com.
You trust us for news and information in your car. Now trust us at home. KSL News Radio is your window to the outside world, keeping you informed on the latest breaking news, weather, traffic, sports, and more. Listen on your Amazon Echo or Google Home device. Just say, Alexa, open KSL News Radio, or listen on the KSL News Radio app. Text the word app to 57500. KSL News Radio, Utah's all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources, an inside look at 2024 presidential politics.
Well, it's that time of the week. Inside Sources Inside Look at the presidential race for 2024. And we'll do our precursor that trying to understand the behavior of someone running for president is like trying to smell the color 7. So you can think about that as you're driving along. The crowded field for the Republican primary is getting more crowded. 2 new candidates made it official in their announcements for running for president this week. Each candidate faces a challenge. How do you differentiate? How do you take on the former president who seems to be leading the field? How do you do that without alienating bases or critical alliances that you'll need to have to run the table to actually get the nomination? This tends to lead people to point fingers, point out flaws, do personal attacks, all the things that we dislike about our politics. So can this group of candidates avoid what in the past has seemed to be the inevitable of going to the lowest common denominator in their communication? So let's take a look at how things played out this week after a very rocky, glitch-filled announcement on Twitter that he was running for president. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis joined Trey Gowdy on Fox News for an interview later that same night. I think it was sort of the saving grace of the evening for the Florida governor. He gave his pitch for president to the cable news audience. Here's what he had to say.
We see the federal government making it more difficult for families to make ends meet, and we have a president who is a listless vessel, not energetic, and not dealing with the key challenges that are facing our country. But it does not have to be this way. Our decline as a country is not inevitable. It is a choice, and I think we can choose a better pathway. And so what I will do is help restore normalcy to our communities, integrity to our institutions, and sanity to our society. Truth needs to be the foundation of everything we do, and common sense can no longer be an uncommon virtue. We need to win again as Republicans. We got to dispense with this culture of losing.
So I think this was one of the better moments that Ron DeSantis had on his announcement day. He was able to get to some of the things, spend a little time poking at the president and getting down to that more divisive language, but quickly pivoted back to the fact that American decline is not inevitable. It's a choice. We have to